Hey everyone, it's Mark. This is my recap for Pokemon Horizons episode 17, Wattrel and Fuecoco Secret Training. This was the 1249th episode of the Pokemon anime, and it focused on Roy training with his Pokemon. Let's dive straight into it. Liko usual recap to start the episode focuses on how the Rising Voltaglers are headed to Galar, but more importantly, she's not over the revelation that Dot is Nido-Thing, and we see her pacing outside Dot's room, completely nervous and flustered. She jumps a little bit when Roy comes from out of nowhere, asking if she has seen his Pokemon. These two are outside, taking in some sun. Wattrel doesn't like it when Fuecoco gets too close, but Fuecoco doesn't realize this and just unintentionally annoys Wattrel some more. I don't know why, but this quick scene looked absolutely beautiful. Like, this looks so crisp to me, but Wattrel doesn't care because Fuecoco keeps on bothering it, so yeah, it's pecking time. Roy tries to calm them down and then leads them in a sing-along, but Wattrel isn't having any of it and lets off a loud growl, and Fuecoco starts screeching too. Yikes. A little bit later, it's feeding time for all the Pokemon aboard the Brave Asagi, but these two can't even eat without making each other angry. So childish. Roy doesn't really know what to do, although it's pretty easy to tell that even though Fuecoco is just trying to be nice, Wattrel prefers to have its own personal space. But since these two are acting like children who don't have any problem-solving skills, it just leads to another fight. Roy runs off to try and calm them down, and now it's time to subtly introduce one of the subplots for this episode, as Orla asks Liko how she feels about adding a new Pokemon to her team. Liko doesn't really know what to think. This isn't really something that's ever crossed her mind, and the timing for this is great since just last week I brought up my theory that Liko won't catch any new team members and she'll just have the Ancient Adventurers Pokemon help her out instead. I got quite a few comments in response to this saying that they really don't want that to come true, and they'd much rather have Liko catch her own Pokemon, so let's see how this develops. Next though is a Nido-Thing video, Yosu, in which Dot discusses whether or not you should train up your starter only or build a team of multiple Pokemon. She must really only take inspiration for her videos from what happens on the airship. Back outside, Roy is trying to play Peacemaker again, and his Pokemon's personalities are on full display here. Fuecoco is more receptive to the idea of patching things up, but Wattrel is really stubborn. Before they can get into another squabble, they're interrupted by the sound of something, which turns out to be Cap and Charizard battling on the wing deck. There isn't a lot going on here, the two are just training together with a little sparring match. Fuecoco is easily impressed by anything Charizard does though, and Roy takes note of how Wattrel, who is part electric type, is fascinated with Cap's electric type moves. Freed calls off the battle, and Roy questions why they were going at it in the first place. Freed explains that this is normal for them, battling each other as a way to train, relieve stress, and deepen the bond between them. Roy likes the sound of that, and he's got an idea. He puts his two Pokemon up against Cap, and I loved how Wattrel was so awestruck that its eyes reverted back to that of a normal Wattrel with this super dopey expression. It changes its stance pretty quickly though, assuming its battle pose. There's not a lot to write home about in this practice battle in all honesty. Cap dodges some attacks, including an Uproar from Wattrel, first time we've heard that move get called, and then Wattrel closes in to unleash another new move, this time it's Spark. Maybe I spoke too soon when I said there wasn't much to note from this battle. The rest of the crew comes out to watch, and inevitably Cap does get the upper hand, dodging every single attack and winning the battle by forcing Roy's Pokemon to crash into each other. Yeah, that's game. This sets off another fight between the two, but Dot interrupts the proceedings to tell Freed that there's going to be some turbulence ahead. Everyone gets ready to help and heads inside, although Roy is still struggling with his Pokemon. Liko isn't waiting around though, she has to go inside to help Molly, and their task is to just keep all the wild Pokemon on the ship nice and calm. These idiots are still lagging behind though, and they only start to head inside as some Gale Force winds pick up, which sends Wattrel flying overboard. It steadies itself to try and glide back towards the ship, and it's actually successful, landing on the observation deck. Roy goes to save Wattrel, while Liko comes in with some amazing big sister advice. Hey Roy, you big tummy, come inside. Before that can happen though, Roy notices Wattrel's wings glowing, and it actually jumps out of Roy's arms to charge towards a piece of debris that was flying straight towards Roy and annihilates it with Spark. They eventually make it back inside, but Roy's fired up after seeing that Spark. I'm just fired up about seeing Fuecoco wearing Roy's hat. How cool is that? Liko points out that Wattrel's power increased because of the wind, and Roy decides to ask Dot about this, which immediately puts Liko on edge. It looks like the Brave Asagi made it out of whatever they just flew through, but things are still turbulent for Liko, who cannot keep her cool around Dot. I loved how nervous she was. Even when Roy asked her what's up, she can only muster some awkward non-answer. When Dot opens the door, Liko is terrified, but Dot just tells them to keep it down. They head inside, and Roy asks about Wattrel while Liko nervously fidgets around and avoids even looking at Dot. She can't believe she's in Nido-Thing's room, but while she fangirls out, Dot tries to analyze the situation. Basically, the gist of what's happening is that Roy's Wattrel has the ability Wind Power, which makes it so that Wattrel becomes charged whenever its ability gets activated by the wind. This makes it so that Wattrel's next electric type attack has twice the power, and Roy thinks this could be enough to defeat Cap, but Dot can't think of how Wattrel could activate this ability in a normal battle. Roy thinks for a second, then comes up with an idea. He rushes out with his Pokemon saying it's time to start training. Liko wasn't sure about this, but let's see how it goes. Roy draws up a diagram of this combo attack, which we don't see, and Wattrel wants to give it a try. Fuecoco isn't as big of a fan, but Roy convinces them that they all need to work together to pull this off. Now that they're on the same page, it's training time. This apparently goes all the way into the nighttime, and the rest of the crew is worried that Roy hasn't come inside yet. And sure enough, this kid has trained himself to exhaustion, but luckily Liko comes and delivers some sandwiches to them. Roy is optimistic about the strategy working, but his Pokemon are completely worn out. They perk up when it's time to eat, and Roy goes back to doing some more secret training, and Liko wonders why he's being so secretive about something like this, which was a great line because we see that Dot is secretly keeping tabs on the situation while hiding from Liko and Roy. Ludlow gets in his mandatory words of wisdom for the episode, basically saying that people in Pokemon are always moving forward and changing. The next morning, Freed has a visitor in his room. Yeah, it's time for Roy to challenge Cap to another battle. We immediately get straight to it, with Freed excited to see the results of Roy's secret training. This trio is psyched and ready to go, so they begin their secret tactic by having Wattrel jump on top of Fuecoco, okay, and then Fuecoco jumps on top of Roy, okay, and the audience wonders if Roy is planning on battling himself. Cap has no clue what he's seeing right now, but Roy exclaims that this is their special attack, and yeah, no one is buying this even one bit. Even Dot can't believe what she's watching. Cap readies for battle, and so too does Roy, leaning backwards before flinging his Pokemon high into the air. As they reach their maximum elevation, Fuecoco fires off some members to push them even higher into the sky, then Roy calls for Wattrel to jump off Fuecoco and get as much altitude as possible. Back on the ground, Fuecoco starts drawing Cap's attention by using Ember repeatedly. Roy's got Cap right where he wants him, jumping up in the air as Wattrel is flying downwards, and is going so fast that its wind power ability is activating. It's charged. Cap readies a Thunder Punch, and the two electric types meet head on. Cap gets blown backwards, losing his, well, Cap, and Roy has Fuecoco follow up with Tackle, but Cap somehow pulls off this crazy mid-air dodge that no one can explain, and yeah, this isn't looking so good. Cap lands gracefully while the other two can't continue. Yikes. Roy is disappointed about losing again, but the others are complimentary about his battle style. He checks on his Pokemon as we transition into the final scene of the episode. While these three are bummed about the defeat, they did deepen their bonds, and now they're even singing together. Wow, that's progress. Liko is watching on, and here we go, important detail, she admits that maybe catching a new Pokemon would be fun after all. Wow, that's progress. Back with Roy, he wonders how Cap pulled off that mid-air dodge, and we cut to Freed hanging out with his Pokemon, noting how Roy knocking off Cap's hat was impressive. Cap isn't taking this lightly, and we see Pikachu redoubling its efforts with Freed watching on as the episode draws to a close. That tease at the end of the episode is leading to something very interesting, but I'll get to that in a little bit. First, let's discuss this episode, and quite honestly, I don't have a lot else to say. I tried to fit as much of my reaction and analysis as I could into the recap section, so this discussion portion may be relatively brief. Roy training and bonding with his Pokemon is cool to see, and I'm glad we get episodes like this. Even though this wasn't groundbreaking or mind-blowing in any way, these kinds of episodes help us grow closer to the characters on the show, whether that be human characters or Pokemon. I hate to always bring up Pokemon Journeys in relation to Pokemon Horizons, but I only compare the two because they are the two most recent series, and one of the criticisms of Journeys was that we barely got to see Ash or Go bond with their Pokemon, so it's refreshing to see Horizons taking a different approach so far. Really, we just didn't get many episodes like this in Journeys, and I think that negatively affected the series overall. I mean, instead, we would get something crazy like a raid battle against Zapdos, well that, or a random filler episode that had almost no relation to any of the episodes around it. So far, 17 episodes into Pokemon Horizons, I genuinely don't think there's been a single filler episode yet, although I know everyone has different definitions of what counts as filler and what doesn't. That's a discussion for another day. For now, let me just get to my rating. I'm giving this episode a 6 out of 10 rating. This episode may not have been spectacular, but it was important. We may not remember this episode a few months from now, but the things that happened this week will directly influence what happens in the near future. Probably the best example of that is the subplot of Liko contemplating catching more Pokemon. Even though she is a Pokemon trainer, she never really considered catching any Pokemon besides Sprigatito. I definitely picked up on that even before this episode. It's why I made the prediction that Liko may not catch any new Pokemon this entire series. However, this episode did a good job explaining why Liko may be changing her mind about this. She saw the interactions Roy had with his Pokemon, both good and bad, and she decided that this was something she would like to try out for herself. Quite honestly though, I have absolutely no idea what other Pokemon would fit good into Lico's team, so let me know your suggestions down in the comments as well as your overall thoughts about this episode. We actually have 2 previews to discuss this week, so let's start with the preview for the next episode. After seeing Cap's mid-air dodge, Liko and Roy are curious to learn more about Freed and Captain Pikachu, much like how I have been curious to learn more about the backstory of the Rising Voltacklers. Well, next week looks like a flashback-heavy episode, and I can't wait to learn more about this backstory. We even see Liko's mother getting involved as well, but that's not all. There was also a special preview that looked ahead to some of the upcoming episodes beyond just next week. Of course, we just talked about the one that will focus on Freed's backstory, but after that, the Rising Voltacklers are going to land in Galar, and even though they're supposed to be looking for Liko's grandmother in some old castle, they're going to end up at the Motostoke Gym instead. Kabu is certainly an interesting choice to include in the anime, and I feel like we gotta see him Gigantamax as Centiskorch, right? After that, a Hatena is going to catch Liko's eye, but hold on, Kabu saw the shiny Rayquaza. That explains why Amethio is going to be there in one of Galar's mines. He must have heard about that sighting as well. Zur and Konya are back too. Wait, sorry, I mean Zerk and Onya. Yeah, how ridiculous is this? At a recent panel at San Diego Comic-Con, we learned some more information about the English dub of Horizons, including the dub names of Zur and Konya, who are now Zerk and Onya. What a silly, silly name change. Anyways, Rayquaza sure isn't down in this mine, but it looks like the next Titan Pokemon that belonged to the Ancient Adventurer might be waiting for the Rising Voltacklers down here. And that pretty much sums everything up, at least all the stuff I found interesting. In other news, during the recent Pokemon Presents, they clarify that the baby turtle from Liko's pendant is actually normal form Terrapagos, as opposed to terrestrial form Terrapagos, so Liko really does have the fully fledged legendary Pokemon with her already. Wow. That's a lot to take in, so please leave a comment and tell me what you think about any of this. And if you want to discuss things even further, go ahead and join my Discord server, where we talk about things from the Pokemon anime, to sports, to shiny hunting in Pokemon Legends Arceus, or even my recent trip to go watch Monday Night Raw this week. And if you join right now, then you even have the chance to join our next Pokemon Showdown tournament that I'm hosting in the server. It's got a pretty interesting theme, I can tell you that much. Yeah, we've got it all in my server, so click on that link in the description if you're interested. Thanks as always for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys next time.